So the Gilded Age is roughly 1870 to 1900. Black Americans faced severe discrimination, including widespread violence, political disenfranchisement through Jim Crow laws like poll taxes and literacy tests, economic hardship, and limited job and property ownership opportunities were like running rampant. During the Jim Crow South, poll taxes and literacy tests were discriminatory practices used to prevent African Americans from voting. Poll taxes required a fee to vote, which obviously affected poor black people the most because they couldn't afford that. Literacy tests included arbitrary or random questions based on random choice or personal whim rather than any reason or system. Obviously, these questions were designed to disqualify black voters regardless of their actual education. Y'all remember the jelly bean videos, or the video in which I talked about jelly beans? That's got to do with all that. So obviously these poll taxes and literacy tests were to strip black people of their political power and their right to vote until the Voting Rights Act of 1965 outlawed them. Black people could not serve on juries or testify against whites, leaving them no legal way to fight discrimination or abuse. These people also had to endure widespread and basically omnipresent social segregation in public and private life, and in northern cities, African Americans were basically put and confined to specific neighborhoods, often the poorest and unhealthiest sections of the city, and I've seen that here in my own town. Americans all over the country, African Americans, were generally seen as inferior. It was illegal for black people to go to school under anti-literacy laws enacted during the colonial period, and it was ended when the 13th Amendment ended slavery in 1865. Following the end of slavery, segregated and unequal schooling persisted through Jim Crow laws, which were outlawed by the 1954 Supreme Court ruling, one of my favorite ones, Brown versus the Board of Education. However, segregation and resistance to desegregation continued, with many schools not fully integrating until the late 1960s. These laws were intended to maintain control over black populations by limiting access to knowledge, as literacy was seen as a tool for self-empowerment and a potential challenge to the institution of white supremacy. And by the way, today is a good day to talk about Ruby Bridges. Ruby Bridges, she integrated a white school flanked by federal agents all around her. Imagine the fear of being a young girl. She was young, and her mom and her family, and they were doing something as huge as this in the South. On November 14, 1960, U.S. Marshals escorted Ruby and her mother for her first day of school. Ruby Bridges was the first black child to attend William Frantz School. In fact, she was the first black child to attend any all-white school in the South. I can't leave that off. I know I'm kind of hopping around in time, but it's important to know that this wasn't long ago. Miss Ruby is still alive. She's still alive. Today, she is 71 years young, and we thank her for her unending sacrifice. And I hope the government, I really hope this, I hope the government pay for her therapy. Ruby's father was fired from his job. Her grandparents were kicked off their sharecropping land due to the family's involvement in the desegregation movement. Ruby's only teacher that year, Mrs. Henry, faced threats and harassment for teaching black children. I've seen pictures and videos from this time in American history. All black children who bravely integrated schools faced intense violence and intimidation from white mobs, including racial epithets and physical threats. These children endured a hostile crowd of parents outside of their schools who shouted insults and threw objects. The violence extended to their families, with parents' tires slashed and windows broken, and in Ruby's case, a woman displaying a black doll in a coffin. Ruby's father was fired from his job, and her grandparents were kicked off their sharecropping land due to her family's involvement in the desegregation effort. Therapy for all of them, everyone involved. I've never seen black people do anything of the sort, even though the world acts as if we are the scary ones who own violence. It's so wild to me that blacks are labeled as violent, but we aren't the ones who are conquering people and nations that already belong to its natives. And don't get me started on black crime. It's a myth. And it's another video. So back to the Gilded Age. Rampant violence against the African American continues from the racist and the ignorant whites, and it has never left or went away. I think it just changes forms under the same system. African Americans suffered unprecedented levels of racial violence, including lynchings, to intimidate and control the black population. If you haven't watched my video about Lady Billie Holiday, please go to my YouTube and check it out. It's worth a look and a listen. But black people were still systemically separated from whites in public transportation, facilities, schools, housing, both in the North and South, dealing with all the bullshit that for some reason comes with being black, while also dealing with economic hardships due to limited opportunities, is spirit breaking. These beautiful, resilient black individuals face significant barriers to economic advancement with limited access to education. But there was low-wage, exploitative work, of course, go figure, and as always, systemic discrimination was continually present. Laws and societal views restricted property ownership and employment for black Americans, forcing many into poverty. Now, can we skip to the good part? Back to the black elite I may or may not have mentioned earlier. A small but black elite group also emerged during this period, demonstrating that some black individuals could achieve wealth despite the systemic inequalities. Even the most successful black individuals were still largely viewed as inferior by white society, highlighting the pervasive nature of racist attitudes. The Gilded Age was a period marked by rapid economic growth and prosperity. Soon after the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, the Gilded Age ushered in a black aristocracy. Many of the black elite during the time owned retail and grocery stores, pharmacies. Despite the overwhelming challenges, African Americans created a vibrant culture and community. Some black individuals and families achieved economic success, establishing business and contributing to society through inventions and other achievements. African Americans demonstrated resilience and courage by fighting against the systemic discrimination and for fighting for their rights. During the Gilded Age, black communities cultivated a vibrant and resilient culture in response to systemic racism and diminishing freedoms. While the era is often portrayed as one of the lowest points of African American history, a closer look reveals the growth of a black elite, the establishment of powerful institutions like the church and schools, and a flourishing of arts and business. In cities across the North and pockets of the South, a black aristocracy emerged, composed of families who amassed wealth and pursued education despite societal barriers. This class included entrepreneurs, doctors, lawyers, and writers, many of whom were born free or newly emancipated. They owned a variety of businesses, such as retail and grocery stores, pharmacies, hotels. Examples include New York oyster magnate Thomas Downing and West Coast entrepreneur Mary Ellen Pleasant, who became a self-made millionaire. Unlike white elites who aimed for personal status, the black elite sought interdependence, and communal uplift. They saw their success as a way to prove black excellence and advance the race as a whole. In communities like Newport, yes, Rhode Island, the black elite established their own social and civic organizations, including tennis and fishing clubs, demonstrating a rich and active social life. As freedoms gained during Reconstruction were stripped away, Black Americans built self-reliant institutions to provide refuge and support. These organizations were crucial for survival and communal advancement in a hostile society. Independent black churches like Philadelphia's Mother Bethel AME Church provided a sanctuary for worship and a powerful network for mutual aid and community organizing. That's what I'm talking about. They helped establish new churches and schools in the South to assist newly freed people. Though Jim Crow laws led to underfunded and segregated black schools, the Gilded Age saw a surge in the establishment of historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs, and local schoolhouses. For many, education was viewed as a pathway to upward mobility and was a core value of the black community. It still is. So happy. Societies and women's black-only fraternal organizations and women's club formed, flourishing, providing social connections, economic support, and platforms for political advocacy. Flourishing arts and black artists, writers, performers use their talents to challenge racist stereotypes and create meaningful cultural products, which contributed to a vibrant literary and journalistic scene. Figures like Peggy Scott from HBO's Gilded Age, though fictional, were inspired by real women like Julia C. Collins. The elite supported and contributed to newspapers and political magazines that fostered black intellectual life. Ragtime music was a precursor to jazz, with its distinctive syncopated rhythms emerging from the African American community in the late 19th century and became a dominant force in American popular music. Despite marginalization, groundbreaking black painter Henry Owasawa Tanner and sculptor Edmonia Lewis carved out a path toward artistic greatness, with some gaining recognition in Europe. The era saw the rise of black actors and writers on Broadway, culminating in the 1921 musical Shuffle Along, which brought black artists, talent, and jazz to the mainstream. This vibrant culture did not erase the widespread poverty, violence, and discrimination on black Americans and that they faced, especially in the Jim Crow South. However, the institutional building and cultural dynamics laid the groundwork for future movements. The rise of a black middle class and intellectual leadership provided the foundation for 20th century activism. The political magazine, The Crisis, and the Harlem Renaissance. This era highlighted the unreconciled strivings of black Americans, the struggle to forge a meaningful identity based on the promise of equality, and a society that sought to impose an inferior definition upon them. Yes, during the Gilded Age, America's GDP grew swiftly, steel output soared, railroads expanded, and millions of immigrants were welcomed into the U.S. But beneath the surface was a society defined by extreme inequality, labor exploitation, monotheistic power, and a corrupt political system. So these things aren't new, and I smile a lot in this video because of the good things that these people did in the face of such opposition and white supremacy and terror from the KKK and the stupid ass Jim Crow laws. Like, that's something to be proud of. And I want black people everywhere to remember this. Like, this is what's in our DNA as well. You know, this resilience. And when I look at black people through any time, even today, resilience and beauty are the things that I always see. So Like I said, if you didn't watch the Billie Holiday video, it talks about lynchings in the South and the voting rights and things like that. Go watch that on my YouTube, Middle Nomad 311. Bye.